Welcome back on Kansas Sports Chatter. It's time now for KSHSAA Info, our opportunity to talk with one of the administrators for the Kansas State High School Activity Association to just to get to know a little bit more what's going on with the specific sports. And our guest today is Kyle Doperalski. He is one of the assistant executive directors for KSHSAA. Hey, Kyle, appreciate you coming on the show. I mean, for you, can you believe it's time to start talking some basketball right now?
Thanks for having me, Cole. Really appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to spending some time with you. And yeah, it's now basketball is rolling, getting ready to roll. Middle school has been going for a few weeks now, and high school starts in earnest here. And of course, we have 23 games this year as a maximum, which is a change. I'm sure we'll get into that. But with that, the regular season, first day of competition starts even 3 days earlier than it traditionally has.
You mentioned the additional games. Was that a huge push as far as getting more games in that high school schedule?
It was a lot of conversation coming into this position 3.5 years ago. Prior to that, Kansas was allowed a maximum of 20, which was on the lower end nationally. There's some states that play in the upper 20s or even 30s as well, and they're counted a little bit differently with tournaments. So that was certainly a push, and some of the conversation that a lot of coaches specifically were passionate about, trying to grow that number and get us a little bit closer to the national average. And that was one thing that ended up happening for this coming season. So certainly some changes that we'll talk about here for this coming season. That is certainly one. So from starting on what ended up being a lot of times the first Thursday of December, now the first date of competition is the first Monday of December, which is just a couple of days after the state football championship game. So for those schools still going in football, that certainly poses a little bit more of a challenge. But on the whole, I think the basketball folks are excited about this around the state.
Do teams, Kyle, do they get penalized if they don't fill that full schedule when it comes to postseason seedings? Does that affect anything?
They do not. Currently, we seed just on winning percentage. So it's not an average of anything or a total of anything. It's a winning percentage. So if a team is 10-10, that's obviously 500. Another team is 11-11, that's 500, and the same tie-breaking scenarios would come into play. So there is no penalty for not playing 23 games. And we have schools that are not playing 23 games. Some are playing 22, some are playing 21, and a small number are staying right at 20, at least from the data and the information that I have right now.
Kyle, overseeing basketball for KSHSAA. All right, the shot clock, you guys threw out that trial run last year with that decision by the executive board. Man, it seemed like overall it went pretty well. Pretty good feedback for that trial period last year, Kyle.
A lot of conversation on both sides of the coin on it. A lot of passionate folks for sure. Hey, we need this. I don't want this. So we heard a lot of different things about that. One of the things that I think was interesting and maybe helped kind of turn the tide to folks who maybe were a little bit questionable about it into believers about it for this upcoming season. You mentioned, Cole, the 1-year trial pilot, which was last season. Before schools could enter scores on our website, which is where a lot of people go to figure out standings, every school or both schools had to fill out. One school for sure had to fill out, was required to. We wanted a second, but it wasn't required with the way our technology was. But at least one school had to fill out a shot clock survey. It was 4 questions. It took just 30 to 45 seconds to complete that before the score could be put in. And we had the games where we knew there was going to be a shot clock and which ones we didn't. So we weren't asking questions in games that there wasn't a shot clock. The most telling statistic out of that bore itself out of those 4 questions: how many shot clock specific stoppages did you have in your game? We had over 3,000 responses last year to games with shot clocks. 93% of those either had 0 shot clock related stoppages or 1 shot clock related stoppage. And wow, you're a sports fan. You've been covering college basketball. You even know in college sometimes you'll have one. Last year I was at a local Division II game, a local Division I game, and they each had a shot clock issue in the game that I was at. So it's really never going to be 100%. But we felt 93% in a 1-year trial pilot where no one had ever done it before was good. Yeah. And so I think that made people feel like, okay, we can do this. We've seen this before. We watch college. We watch the NBA. We know how to do this. And our schools did a great job. And the ADs hiring the table crews put good people on the shot clock. And that was one of the results. So that was probably the biggest statistic that led to where we're going now.
going forward, kind of outline how it looks for those that haven't followed, and you guys got great articles out there and information, but the upper classes, 6A, 5A, 4A, will have it implemented this year, mandated, and in the rest of classes to follow. Is that correct?
You got it. 2A and 3A this time next year will be required. If a school wants to host a postseason game and earns the right to host a postseason game, they'll need to have a shot clock. And then the following year, 27 and 28, 1A comes into that not only for the postseason, but in the regular season as well. So 2 years from now, every varsity game in the state of Kansas will have a shot clock. We're a little bit unique nationally for those states who have adopted the shot clock. There's 32 or 33 of them now. We were 26 or 27, depending on who you talk to in terms of when we came into that. Almost every state just went all in, all classes right away. We're doing this, boys and girls, no matter what. We took a stair-stepped approach and kind of followed. Nebraska and Arizona did similar things. So we're on the same path as those states, but there aren't very many around the country that are doing the stair-step phased-in approach like we are.
Yeah, a lot of research goes into that before that executive board makes those decisions. Really good stuff. All right, the other big change for basketball, I feel like basketball, you've had, a couple of topics here, was the host sites for postseason for state basketball. Talk about those changes, and especially I think we'll start with the quarterfinals. So for the teams that do qualify for the state tournament, Kyle, kind of run through how the quarterfinals are set up this year.
So let's start with why we're doing this, Cole. So as part of our legislative cycle and process, one of the steps in that is the fall administrator meetings, which our executive director, Bill Faflet, goes around the state to 8 or 9 different places. Superintendents come, principals, athletic directors. Each school gets one vote, and there's a wide variety of questions on there. Some are basketball related, some are other activities, some are calendar related, as a way to get feedback from the membership. And even if something is viewed favorably there, that isn't just the rubber stamp right there that is happening no matter what. It still has to follow more steps. But a couple of years ago, in the fall of 2023, one of the questions on that agenda in the fall regional administrator meetings was, should KSHSAA combine classes at the state basketball tournament? And that's a question that has been talked about since I was in high school, and even before that, 25 plus years ago. Every class responded, 1A through 6A, with the yes majority. And then you add up all of those, and of course, then the yes becomes even stronger. So then we got into the situation of, okay, how does this look? What happens here? We'd already talked to the host. They thought it was a good idea to do that. And then we came into and I'll skip a lot of chapters and then just get to the end of the book because that was your question. So we are in a model here where our first round, opening round, tip-off, quarterfinal round will be played at 7 different places around the state. Let's go from west to east. So one site is United Wireless at Dodge City, and then we've got Tony's Pizza Event Center in Salina, Kansas Wesleyan in Salina, Coke Arena in Wichita, Friends University, then Emporia State University, White Auditorium in Emporia like we talked about, and then on the far east side we have Kansas City, Kansas Community College. So those 7 sites will host the 28 opening round tip-off quarterfinal games of the state tournament. And the major difference is, instead of like it has been in the past where one class, both genders, go to the same place, now it's not going to be class specific. Those quarterfinal opening round tip-off matchups will be predicated on distance to the higher seed. So the higher seed has earned the right to play close to home, so they're going to play as close to home as possible. There's a caveat in there of 250 miles. If a school has to travel more than 250 miles as the lower seed to what would be the closest facility to the higher seed, they will meet in the middle, probably in Salina or Wichita. So I'll give you an example. So let's say Shawnee Mission East in the Kansas City area is a 1 seed in 6A, and Liberal is the 8 seed. The closest site that we talked about to Shawnee Mission East is Kansas City, Kansas Community College. But as we all know, it's more than 250 miles from Liberal to Kansas City. Right. So instead of Shawnee Mission East playing that game at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, that game would be played in the middle in either Salina or Wichita, depending on what the other 27 quarterfinal opening round tip-off matchups were. Another example, let's take Shawnee Mission East again in Kansas City. Let's say they're a higher seed and they are matched up with Wichita East in the opening round. It is less than 250 miles from Wichita to Kansas City, so that game would be played at Kansas City, Kansas Community College. There'll be no more than 5 games at each of those opening round tip-off facilities, and as little as 2 or 3, depending on where those matchups are, where those higher seeds are, where the lower seeds are as well. So the key to it is there are 28 quarterfinal games that will be placed at the 7 sites throughout the state. It's probably not going to be an even 4-4-4-4 all the way across. Some sites might have 5, some sites might have 3 or 2, depending on where all those higher seeds and where the lower seeds are for that opening round.
That's exciting. So just to clarify again and reiterate for fans, like they won't necessarily, like if you talk about 6A girls, all 4 of the 6A girls quarterfinal matchups won't necessarily be at the same site.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. Yeah. No, I think it's exciting. I mean, for you in picking those sites as well, like kind of what goes into that process?
A lot of things go into it. First and foremost, the facilities have to be available. So with those dates, some of our traditional facilities are not available. Hutchinson Community College, a fantastic site for us. The Blue Dragons are usually playing at home with one or both teams on that Tuesday of state basketball week. So that is just one example of a little bit of the Jenga game that we play, finding host, and that's a part of it. We need them to be geographically spread out throughout the state, which we did from Dodge City to Kansas City and north to south to some degree, with Wichita and Salina being in there. The hosts have to be willing to do it, because this just in, the Kansas State High School Activities Association doesn't own or control any facilities.
Right.
So we are really dependent upon our great hosts that we have, not only for basketball, but state football. I mean, every state event. And there's sometimes a high school tied to that, sometimes not. But we have great host facilities and great host communities and great host administrations in this state. And those are just a couple of the pieces that go into that.
Kyle, really appreciate the time and the information.
Yeah, no problem, Cole. I think it'll be exciting. This will be the first time since 1953 that we've combined classes. So definitely something new for a lot of Kansas, including me, that we haven't seen yet. I think, and you've probably seen this too, at times, sometimes those traditional quarterfinal round games, there's not a lot of people there. They start earlier. Both teams have to travel 2 or 3 hours, and it almost sometimes feels like a summer league game. What I'm really interested in, I think a lot of people are interested in, now that most of those games will be played a lot closer to at least one team, and that would be the higher seed, that we think the atmosphere will be better. We think the attendance will be better. So I'm excited to see how that plays out in the quarterfinal opening round, tip-off round. And then, as we mentioned, from there, then the classes are combined. And really the goal, and one of the things that I have continually heard, and even heard more so after the announcement, was all the different conversations around this the last few decades of looking to get something like this to happen, is that there'll be 4 state championship games back to back to back to back on the same court under the same roof on Championship Saturday. And that atmosphere is going to be awesome. So we're excited about that. And I think the only other thing to add is we have 7 classes, as you know, in basketball in the state of Kansas. So that's an odd number. It's a prime number. It's a difficult number to work with. So as long as we continue this model, there's always going to be one lone wolf. This year, that lone wolf will be 1A Division I in Dodge City. Next year, it'll be 3A at Hutch Community College. And we want to try to mix that lone wolf around, because we want different classes to be combined with other classes so they can see the benefit of those 4 state championship games in a row on Championship Saturday.
Exciting stuff. Kyle, appreciate it. We'll catch up soon.
All right, Cole. Thanks so much.
That's Kyle Doperalski, one of the assistant executive directors for the Kansas State High School Activities Association.